everybody, it's Tony Robbins. Listen, I've spent the last 40 plus years, 43 years now I'm entering into here, working with people all over the world in 100 countries to show them how they can improve their lives. I've been obsessed for 42 plus years.
That is the best piece of advice that I can give you, and that's a good guideline to life in general.
Truth number 1. Being harmless is a fatal mistake.
Life is a very difficult process. You're not prepared for it unless you have the capacity to be dangerous. It's very helpful for people to hear that they should make themselves competent and dangerous and take their proper place in the world.
Competent and dangerous? Why dangerous?
Because it's the alternative to being weak, and weak is not good.
How is it good to be dangerous?
Because it makes you formidable. That doesn't mean that you should be cruel. It doesn't mean any of that. There's a statement in the New Testament: those who have swords and know how to use them but keep them sheathed will inherit the world. That's a way better way of thinking about it. You have to be powerful and formidable. And
so therefore, take martial arts, take self-defense classes, conceal carry.
then peaceful, in that order. And that's not the same as being naive and weak and harmless, which is what young men are being encouraged to be. It's like, that's a very bad idea, because naive, weak, and harmless means that you can't withstand the tragedies of life. You can't bear any responsibility. You'll end up bitter. And when you get bitter, then you get dangerous.
How should people become more dangerous?
Becoming more articulate is definitely, I would say, that's the primary array of weapons. So, I mean, physical prowess is something, and it's not nothing. That physical confidence that comes along with that as well. The same thing replicated at the level of the ability to communicate and to think. And that's way broader field of battle and opportunity. There's nothing that makes you more formidable than verbal competence and being able to articulate, being able to think, to marshal your arguments, right? It's a battlefield metaphor.
Truth number 2. Being happy makes you trapped.
Positive emotion is associated with movement forward. Like if you're where you want to be and things are going well, then your behavior should be activated so that you go and get things. Now, one of the negative consequences of that is that if you're really in a good mood, really happy, you're going to be impulsive and make mistakes. Positive emotion makes people impulsive. Maniacs, for example. If you're manic, you're one happy person. Way too happy. Everything is great. Nothing but wonderful things that are beyond your imagination are going to happen to you. And then a week later, you crash into your depressive episode and you realize that you're $150,000 in debt and you've alienated everyone that you know. It's like, that's untrammeled positive emotion. So how about
He's talking about bipolar people, so this doesn't really affect the Gen Pop.
A pure index of positive emotion is no way of determining whether or not a system is working properly, even your own system. You need a balance between positive and negative emotions. Plus, positive emotions are absolutely exhausting, because if you're in a manic episode, it's like, it's time to get everything good right now. Fine, but you won't sleep for a week, and then you die, because you just burned yourself to a crisp. And so to be overwhelmingly enthusiastic about everything sounds like a real blast. It's really not good. You need a balance between these two systems, because the whole world isn't explored territory bursting with nothing but promise. That's not the world. The world is that, in a bounded space, a little bit, with an absolute horror show going out around the periphery. And both systems need to be active in order to keep you balanced.
Truth
He cracks
number
me
3. You're full of excuses.
There's always part of you thinking, well, I need a justification for being useless and horrible, because that'd be a lot less work. And so then if something terrible comes along, you think, aha, that's just exactly the excuse that I was waiting for. And then out all that comes. I think people are always looking for an excuse to have their character corrupted. Because if your character is corrupted, then you get to lie, and you get to cheat, and you get to steal, and you get to betray, and you get to act resentful,
And you get to lie.
and you get to do nothing.
Yeah.
And that's all easy. It's easier to lie than to tell the truth. It's easier to do nothing than to do something.
Said.
Just because something terrible happens to you doesn't mean that you get to wander off the path and make things worse. And maybe it doesn't matter how terrible it is that what happens to you. And that's a tough call, because you see people now and then in life who, they've really got it rough, man. Like 50 bad things are happening to them at the same time, and you think, oh, it's no wonder. If you were bitter and resentful and hostile, it'd be like, yeah, no wonder. That's a really useful thing to think. Maybe the rest of it is trivial in comparison. I know that's a rough thing because you can be in very harsh circumstances, but I do think there's something to that. I mean, I've got thousands of letters now in the last year from people who have told me that they were in a pit and that they decided that they were going to try to put their lives together and that it worked. And so that's really something, and they write surprised. It's like, well, I decided that I was going to work hard at what I was doing and I wasn't going to lie any more than absolutely necessary. I thought I'd give it a try for a few months, and all sorts of good things started to happen to me. And so I do think that one of the most fundamental existential questions is, like, if things aren't going well for you in your life, is, are you absolutely certain that you're doing absolutely everything you can to put things in order?
Truth number 4. Nothing worthwhile happens without sacrifice.
Absolutely true.
What's the difference between the successful and the unsuccessful? The successful sacrifice.
It's
Things get better as
it's how you spend your time.
the successful practice their sacrifices. We can see it even though it's only potential. We can adjust our behavior in the present in order to maximize our probability of success in the future. How best to do that? Well, the idea is something like, don't hesitate to offer the ultimate sacrifice if you want the future to turn out ultimately well.
Truth number 5. Bitter truth is better than a sweet lie.
Don't
100%.
underestimate the
Why should you use Miro? When you draw on a whiteboard, no one sees it. With Miro, you plan together in real time for literally
power of truth. There's nothing more powerful. Now, in order to speak what you might regard as the truth, you have to let go of the outcome. You have to think, all right, I'm going to say what I think, stupid as I am, biased as I am, ignorant as I am. I'm going to state what I think as clearly as I can, and I'm going to live with the consequences no matter what they are. You might have to pay a price for that, but that's fine. You're going to pay a price for every bloody thing you do and everything you don't do. You don't get to choose to not pay a price. You get to choose which poison you're going to take. That's it. It's a balance of risks. It's like, you want to pay the price for being who you are and stating your mode of being in the world, or do you want to pay the price for being a bloody serf, one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that, right? No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you, because of course you've never stood up for yourself.
This is super important right now in the world because so many people are being censored and therefore not given their authentic voice. And it's being labeled misinformation. And there's nothing more dangerous for a society than to not be able to exchange ideas and information, because that is how people evolve.
Yourself, say what you think carefully, pay attention to your words. It's a price you want to pay if you're willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. And in the most real sense, if you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. And nothing better could possibly happen to you. There'll be ups and downs, and there'll be pushback, and there'll be controversy and all of that, but the truth is what redeems the world from hell.
Truth number 6.
So
Those
true.
who irritate you make you better.
Talking to the people who agree with what you say is like walking around in a desert. You already know everything that they say. The reason you're associating with them in that situation is so that they never say anything that challenges you, because you're afraid that if you go outside of what you understand, that you won't be able to tolerate the chaos. It might be useful to listen to people that annoy you on the off chance that they know something that, if they tell you, you can use instead of dying. People have an unbelievable capacity to face and overcome things they don't understand. And not only that, that's essentially what gives life its meaning.
Truth number 7. Mistakes and pain are the key.
It's more important to notice that you're wrong than it is to prove that you're right. Imagine that you were in a bad relationship. And so when they first leave you, it's a catastrophe because your world falls apart. But when your world falls apart, you're somewhere new. It's possible to learn something new in that place. So you might learn, for example, that you should be a little sharper the next time that you go out with someone. Or you should be a little bit more careful about picking up on clues that your partner's bored with you. Or that maybe you should stop associating with lying psychopaths. And what that means now and then is that when you...
Or that you're bored with your partner. I mean, I always get miffed when it's always like, what to do to keep your man? No, what to do to keep your woman? Like, it has to be an equal informational share.
fall into the belly of a whale and you're swallowed up by something that lurks underneath, that you can come out the other side transformed. And that's actually how people learn. Every time you learn something, you learn because something you did didn't work. And that exposes you to the part of the world that you don't understand. Every time you're exposed to a part of the world that you don't understand, you have the possibility of rebuilding the structures that you use to interpret the world.
Truth number 8. The antidote to suffering is responsibility.
One of the things that strikes the audience as silent constantly, because I'm always listening to them to see, when the attention is maximally focused, is the antidote to the meaninglessness of their life and the suffering and the malevolence that they might be displaying because
This is cured by actually having hobbies that allow you to actually create instead of consume.
they're resentful and bitter about how things have turned out. The antidote to that is to take on more responsibility.
I was watching The Simpsons the other day. I watched the first Simpsons episode and I deconstructed it. And so it's really interesting. So what happens in the first Simpson episode is that it's Christmas and Homer and Marge are going to buy some Christmas presents, but Homer doesn't get his Christmas bonus. And so he's absolutely crushed by that. And that actually is a recurring theme in The Simpsons, where Homer loses his job or something like that, or can't make enough money. He's completely crushed. Even though he's kind of useless, bumbling, laughing fool of a guy, the thing that gives that show his soul is that he's still oriented towards his family. That's what makes him honorable, is that foolish as he is, he's decided to adopt responsibility for his family and to try to bear that. And so he's a holy fool. He's not a complete fool. And it's so interesting watching the story because he suffers dreadfully as a consequence of not being able to fulfill his responsibility. Well, that's for men. Women know what they have to do. Men have to figure out what they have to do. A man has to decide that he's going to do something. You can decide, man, but there's some criteria. It should be good for you. It should be good for you in a way that facilitates you moving forward. Maybe it should be good for you in a way that's also good for the family and the community. It should cover the domain of life. I mean, there's constraints on what you should regard as a value, but within those constraints you have the choice. You have choice. Well, the thing is that people will carry a heavy load if they get to pick the goddamn load. And they think, well, I won't carry any load. It's like, okay, fine, but then you're like the sled dog that doesn't have a sled to pull. You're gonna tear pieces out of your own legs because you're bored. And it's so interesting to watch the young men when you talk to them about responsibility. They're so goddamn thrilled about it. It just blows me away. It's like, really? That's the counterculture.
Yes.
Grow the hell up and do something useful. Really? I could do that? Oh, I'm so excited by that idea. No one ever mentioned that before.
It's so interesting because it's as if everybody kind of knows this, but
You can sense his cynicism because our schools have not created the best students. They're not learning real life skills and they don't know the basic brunt of what it means to live a meaningful and productive life. And that's on the parents as well, because God knows that parenting has gone downhill in this country and that irresponsibility has been made to be very sexy. So that's a huge problem as well.
that it hasn't crystallized. It's like, well, you should be responsible because that's what a good citizen is. It's not, no, you should be responsible because you need to have a deep meaning in your life to offset the suffering so you don't get bitter. And the way you do that is to bear a heavy load, to get yourself in.
So fat. Brendan, you're not fat. It's the shirt. Look at Nate. His true class.
In check. for you now and for you in the future, and then to do the same for your family and your community, and that there's real nobility in that, and there's real meaning. And more, the other thing that I've been suggesting to people, and I also believe this, is that if you don't get your act together and you let yourself slide, then what kind of moves in to take the place of what you could have been is something that's really not good at all. So it's not only that if you're living like a dissolute life, that...
But the NWO is currently in the position to not allow you to become what you need to become in life, and just to be a global slave and keep sweating for Ukraine. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
You're not aiming at anything positive, and so you don't have any real meaning, and you're subsumed by anxiety and all of that, and hopelessness. But something kind of hellish moves in there too to occupy that place, and so then you end up making things worse.
Truth number 9. You really can't live in this world without a purpose.
Maybe you think, no, life isn't that hard. You know, not only is it that hard, it's even harder than you think. You're going to be tested, that's for sure. And if you have a sustaining...
But life doesn't have to be hard. This is the big realization that everybody's coming to through communism, right? The matrix and crony capitalism makes life harder than it needs to be. Socialism and communism is not the answer. Equity and making everybody the same is not the answer. You cannot fulfill your soul's purpose in this technocracy that they're forcing upon humanity incrementally. Life was never meant to be this hard. If we weren't slaves to the Federal Reserve, it wouldn't be so hard. We were never meant to pay the taxes that we're paying. You know, it's a real conundrum. But the NWO is not the answer. It simply isn't. The answer is self-responsibility, right? And like he says, purpose. But you can't have purpose in a world that keeps taking away your ability to live, to find your purpose, and to be creative, and to discover who you are. So we're in trouble. We're in big trouble.
Then, there's well, Nietzsche said himself, he who has a why can bear any how. Why would you look in the darkest places? Because in the darkest places you could find what still shines. If it can shine in the darkest places, then you know it's a real light. And so you look at the things you don't want to look at. You have to look at the things you don't want to look at. Well, why do meaning?
And if you look at the things that you don't want to look at, what happens is that... Sorry, this is an ad, obviously. So annoying. If you look at the things that you don't want to look at, what happens is that you start to heal yourself.
That is the best piece of advice that I can give you.
And then you heal the world by healing yourself. And then you're less apt to hurt other people. You're less apt to be completely insecure. And, you know, it all starts with the self. So let's go to... This quite often happens to me because I'm trying to shut it off, and it's just a fact.
So it's not only that if you're living like a dissolute life, that you're not aiming at anything positive, and so you don't have any real meaning, and you're subsumed by anxiety and all of that, and hopelessness, but something kind of hellish moves in there too to occupy that place, and so then you end up making things worse.
Truth number 9. You really can't live in this world without a purpose.
Maybe you think, no, life isn't that hard. You know, not only is it that hard, it's even harder than you think. You're going to be tested, that's for sure. And if you have a sustaining meaning, then there's well, Nietzsche said himself, he who has a why can bear any how. Why would you look in the darkest places? Because in the darkest places you could find what still shines. If it can shine in the darkest places, then you know it's a real light. And so you look at the things you don't want to look at. You have to look at the things you don't want to look at. But why do meaningful things? Only modern people, it's part of this process of criticism. We criticize the idea of meaning so much that we don't really believe in it anymore. It's like, well, that's fine, you cannot believe it, but try living without it, see how far you get with that. You need a reason to get out of bed on a terrible day. Okay, what's that reason going to be? Well, let's think it through. You know people who can get out of bed on a terrible day. Do you admire them? Yes. What are those people like? Are they taking responsibility for themselves? Definitely. Do they have excess capacity, so they're taking responsibility for other people? Yeah. Are they doing difficult things? Yes, obviously. The more you respect them, the more you also see that they're doing difficult things and doing them well. So what does that mean? Do some difficult things. Do them well.
Yes.
So pick up your goddamn burden and walk up the hill. Yep, I get it. And people do get it. And it's not surprising because that is the end. That's the alternative to hell. Accept the burdensome condition of suffering voluntarily and you transcend it. It's like you got a problem with the world? Hey man, no wonder you have a problem with the world. Like the world is a pretty rough place and it can use some work. It's like, have you done all your work? If the answer to that is no, then I would say put in order what you can put in order. It's like, well, you have a problem. Okay, what's the problem? What are its constituent elements? What are the smallest implementable steps that we could take to start to address the problem? Implement the best plan that you have at hand. That's it. You'll learn. It won't be the right plan. It doesn't matter. You'll learn implementing that plan. You'll learn a whole bunch, and then the next plan you make will be better. Implement the best plan you have at hand.
Truth number 10. You've already wasted a lot of time.
Don't remain in stasis. You get old way faster than you think. Time ticks away, man. Get at it. Get out there in the world. Have your adventure. Get the hell out there. Do something. Fail. Fail while you're trying. Then you'll learn why you failed. Then you won't have to fail again. It's like aim at something and progress towards it. And be willing to change your aim because what the hell do you know? But aim at something, and then at least you're oriented. And you have to aim at something that you believe would be worth trying. So yeah, get at it, man. Don't waste time.
That's what I always say to all my friends who are creative. Stop wasting time. Stop giving your time to other people. Stop getting distracted. Get your validation from yourself. For the fuck's sake. There's no better advice than that.